cave entrance loomed before me like a giant mouth, dark water swirling at its threshold. My dive light cut through the gloom, revealing limestone teeth hanging from the ceiling. After 3 years of open water diving, I thought I was ready for this. My cavern certification was fresh, the instructor's warning still echoing in my head. But standing at the edge of Devil's Eye Spring in Florida, watching the current pulse in and out like the cave was breathing, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. My buddy Sarah checked her pressure gauge one more time. We'd planned this dive for months, studying the cave system maps until we could trace the passages with our eyes closed. Devil's Eye was considered one of the safer cavern dives in Florida. Clear water, minimal silt, well-marked guidelines. But safe is relative when you're about to swim into a hole in the earth. 2,000 psi, Sarah signaled, tapping her gauge. I checked mine, 2,100. Plenty of air for a cavern dive where we'd never lose sight of natural light. That was the rule that separated cavern diving from cave diving. Always maintain a visual on the exit. Always. We descended slowly, following the permanent guideline installed by the cave diving community. The water was gin clear, visibility stretching beyond our lights into azure perfection. Fossils embedded in the limestone walls caught our beams. Ancient sand dollars and shells from when Florida was ocean floor millions of years ago. 20 feet down, the cave opened into a massive room. Stalactites hung like chandeliers, formed during the ice ages when this was a dry cave. The beauty was overwhelming. I'd seen pictures, watched videos, but nothing compared to floating weightless in this underwater cathedral. Sarah pointed to her depth gauge. 33 feet. We were at the cavern zone limit. Any deeper, and we'd need full cave certification. I gave her the OK sign and we began exploring laterally, always keeping that blessed shaft of sunlight in view behind us. That's when I saw it. A narrow passage leading off to the right, marked with a bold red octagonal sign. Stop. Prevent your death. Go no further unless cave certified. Beyond the sign, the passage descended into absolute darkness. Something moved in that darkness. My heart hammered as I focused my light into the passage. There it was again, a flash of silver, too large to be a fish. Sarah hadn't noticed, mesmerized by a school of sunfish circling near the ceiling. I knew I shouldn't even be looking down that passage. Every fiber of my training screamed to turn away. But the movement came again, and this time I saw it clearly. A dive light. Someone was in the cave system, deep in the cave system, and their light was moving erratically. I grabbed Sarah's arm, pointing toward the forbidden passage. She saw the light too, her eyes widening behind her mask. We both knew what an erratic light pattern meant. Either equipment problems or a diver in distress. Sarah checked her air. 1,800 psi. I had 1,900. We exchanged a long look. The responsible thing was to surface and alert the dive shop. Let the cave rescue team handle it. But how long would that take? If someone was in trouble back there, every second counted. I pointed to myself, then the passage, then made the question signal. Sarah shook her head violently. She was right. We weren't certified for this. We didn't have the training, the equipment, the redundant air supplies. Going into that passage could turn one emergency into three, but the light kept flashing, and now I could see a pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS. My mind raced through our options. We couldn't penetrate the cave, but maybe we could help from here. I pulled out my backup light and began flashing a response. We see you. Help coming. I didn't know if they'd understand, but I had to try. The distress signal stopped. Then slowly, the light began moving toward us. My relief was short-lived as I realized how slowly it was approaching. Something was definitely wrong. Sarah and I positioned ourselves at the passage entrance, ready to assist but not crossing that critical threshold. The light grew stronger, and finally a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a young woman, maybe mid-20s, in full cave gear, double tanks, multiple regulators, the works. But her movements were sluggish, and I could see panic in her eyes. She was alone. The first rule of cave diving is never dive alone, ever. She reached us and immediately grabbed her alternate air source, making the share air signal. This made no sense. She had double tanks. I checked her pressure gauges. Left tank, 500 psi. Right tank empty. My blood ran cold. She'd been breathing from empty tanks, surviving on whatever residual air remained in the system. She was probably already hypoxic, running on fumes and adrenaline. Without hesitation, I handed her my alternate regulator. She grabbed it desperately, taking several deep breaths. Sarah moved in to support her other side. Together, we began a slow ascent toward the cavern entrance. At 20 feet, I made everyone stop. Safety stop. Even in an emergency, we couldn't risk decompression sickness. The rescued diver's breathing had stabilized, but I kept a death grip on her BCD. My air gauge read 1200 psi, more than enough to get us all out safely. Those 3 minutes felt like hours. Finally, we broke the surface in the small pool of Devil's Eye. Other divers rushed to help as we hauled the cave diver onto the platform. "My buddy," she gasped as soon as the regulator was out of her mouth. "He's still down there." The guideline broke. We got separated. My heart sank. Someone was still in the cave, lost without a guideline to follow out. This was every cave diver's nightmare. Sarah was already on her phone calling 911 while I stayed with the survivor. "How long, Amirason?" I asked. "How long has he been lost?" 20 minutes, maybe more. We were at 2,800 feet penetration when the line snapped. I found my way out following the wall, but Jake, he went the wrong way. 20 minutes. At that depth of penetration, even with double tanks, he'd be running low on air. The cave rescue team was already mobilizing, but Devil's Eye Spring was a complex system. Finding someone at 2,800 feet penetration would be like finding a needle in a very dark, very wet haystack. Over the next hour, I watched the best cave divers in Florida gear up for the search. They moved with practiced efficiency, checking and double-checking equipment. This was what they trained for. Within 90 minutes, they'd located Jake. He'd found an air pocket in a dome room and was waiting, conserving his remaining air. The rescue team guided him out safely. Later, talking to the sheriff, we learned what had happened. Jake and his partner were experienced cave divers with over 200 cave dives between them, but they'd made one critical error. They'd tied into an old weathered guideline instead of running their own. The line had deteriorated over time and finally snapped under tension. "You saved my life," the female diver said to Sarah and me as the ambulance prepared to take her for observation. "I wouldn't have made it to the surface without your air." I shook my head. "You saved yourself by making it to the cavern zone. We just helped with the last bit." As we packed up our gear, Sarah was unusually quiet. Finally, she spoke. "I want to get cave certified." I looked at her in surprise. After what we just witnessed, I expected her to swear off overhead environments forever. "Think about it," she continued. "If we'd been cave certified, we could have done more. We could have gone in after her earlier, maybe even helped search for her buddy. I don't want to feel that helpless again." She was right. Today we'd been lucky. The survivor had made it to us. But what if she hadn't? What if she'd been 100 feet further back, beyond our reach? 6 months later, Sarah and I completed our full cave certification. Our instructor was one of the rescue divers from that day at Devil's Eye. He remembered us. "You two did everything right," he said during our final checkout dive. "You stayed within your limits, rendered assistance safely, and called for help. That's what good divers do." Now, 5 years later, I'm part of the North Florida Cave Rescue Team. I've participated in 12 rescues, helped recover lost divers, and taught hundreds of cavern students the importance of proper training and equipment. Every time I pass that sign at Devil's Eye, "Prevent your death," I remember that day. Cave diving isn't for everyone. It requires a special mindset, rigorous training, and absolute respect for the environment. But for those who pursue it safely, it opens up a world of indescribable beauty.